up yet, you can sign up. Just email me at slewald@genoachurch.org. And every week we send out a list of questions to kind of get some interaction in this time. And so this week we sent out 4 questions.
Yeah,
and
3 legitimate questions and 1 get-to-know-you question.
Always one silly. Trying to create community with this. And I love seeing people as they come to the drive-in service because, even in person this week, but the drive-in service, or people are rolling down their windows, hey, we like your Bible study, and I'm so-and-so. Because we've been interacting for several weeks in the book of Galatians, and now we finally get to put names and faces together. So if you want to sign up, slewald@genoachurch.org. I send you the list of things that we do every week, and basically it's just reading a chapter, 1 Peter, watching a 10 to 12-minute video on Right Now Media by Kyle Idleman. And if you don't have a Right Now Media account, I can get you hooked up with that. And then these questions that we go with. And so we will get going on that. But before we do, it's summer.
Yes, it is, finally.
It feels like summer in here because we did not turn the air conditioning on, and probably for the last 5 or 6 weeks it's been cool.
Yeah, fun fact, we showed up in 3-piece suits, ready to do this.
Black tie affair.
Yeah, I mean, we were really dressed up for the occasion and then realized that, legitimately, it's like 78 degrees in here right now.
Oh, at least.
I'm dying.
At least.
But anyway, so if we pass out during it, just...
we'll carry on, just finish.
Yeah, if you pass out, I'll take it. And
Same.
if I pass out, same. Okay, cool.
Deal.
All right. Well, how was your week? Good week, or...
Well, it was good. Yeah, we stayed busy. We were outside. I don't know if you look a little tan here.
I've noticed, yeah.
But between rollerblading, kayaking, bike riding, laying mulch for friends, we stayed outside the whole time. And we didn't feel it till at night. And then I feel like completely burnt. So, yeah.
A lobster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet. Yeah, we did, got the pool out, got myself, you didn't know this.
I didn't know you got a pool.
I have a pool at my house. It's 6 feet long and 4 feet wide. So it's not very big. It's a small pool for my kids.
How deep?
Well, I'm trying to save water, so like a foot right now, but I'm trying to fill it up, But it was pretty cool. The kids were out there, fun, putting the sunscreen on and then removing ticks from their head all day. So that was kind of fun. We live out in the country, so we always got to watch out for the ticks, But yeah, it was awesome getting out. Had dinner outside on our porch last night, or the deck, and I love it. This is my favorite time.
Well, I was trying to get to more something like Sunday morning specific that you did.
Oh, yeah. I preached. I got to preach in the main service.
Yeah.
3 times. It was awesome.
Yeah.
I love preaching to adults. I love it. There's interaction. I see people like kind of. My favorite is I was on the lift and I was up really high and I looked down and there was I felt terrible for her. She was right in the front space and the whole time she's like kind of like looking her neck out. And I felt bad. I was like, oh, I hope she doesn't get a creak in her neck. But yeah, it was a blast, man. It was really cool.
I love going up there and you see people eating popcorn in their cars. Yeah. Or like one time it was like a Chinese buffet where they had their little Chinese thing set up and they're all dishing it out to their family.
Yeah, that's
Great way to
awesome.
eat. But also it was the first week back inside and we had all the local news stations that were here and ended up on TV. Tell me a little bit about inside social distance preaching.
Yeah, so I had to preach from pretty far back on the stage. Want to keep some distance there. When you're preaching, you project, and you don't want to, do anything like that. But it was cool. I remember when we walked in, we had seats set up in groups, and then if a family came that was bigger, you could put seats together. I remember walking in and seeing 12 seats together, and I was like, we got to split this up. But it was one. It was the
one
Hardwicks.
family. Yeah,
it was the Hardwicks that took up the whole row, and I loved it, man. I really miss seeing people in face. Or seeing their faces and in person and stuff. And I've told you before, I've had to self-quarantine myself from out there in the parking lot.
Oh, you're awful.
Because I'm the worst.
You are.
I'll lean into people's cars and I'm like, we miss you. And they're like, get out of my car. 6 feet social distance. And I'm terrible at it. So I had to make the hard decision to stay inside as people are leaving. And it's just.
I like how we did it with the church, and I apologize for those that know we had the inside service, but we said, hey, come back next Sunday for a big announcement. And then on Friday night, we're like, let's go in the building.
That's right.
So we sent out a phone call to several thousand, and I think some people didn't get it, so we apologize if you weren't able to make it.
Yeah.
But we look forward. Our 12:30 service will be inside for the ongoing, for a time anyways. And so if you want to come in the building, still keeping social distance, check us out Sundays, 12:30.
Yeah, we'd love to see you. And what you said is important. We do the social distancing. We have hand sanitizer. Like we are following the guidelines.
Yeah.
So
No kids ministry or anything like that. Just coloring book.
That's right. Yeah, that's good.
But, all right.
Well, hey, let's do this. Since this is our first week back, and with the new series, I mean, you sent out a question, which I'm very excited about. This is the Get to Know You question, and you guys responded with this. The question is, what is your favorite movie? So I know we had a lot of responses to this, right?
We did. And
you didn't know a lot of these movies, did you?
So I think the people that responded this week.
Careful.
All right, number 1.
Go ahead.
Bridge on a River Kwai.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Yeah, fantastic movie.
They won Movie of the Year?
It got Best Picture the year it came out. And I think it was we said it was the 50s. I think it was like 1957.
Okay.
So obviously I only know of it because I worked at a movie store,
And you're a huge movie buff.
I'm a huge movie guy, yeah. So I know of it, but you'd never heard of it, right?
No, I'm a documentary guy, so none of these are documentaries. So
okay, there we go.
Anything with Loretta Lynn?
Okay. I don't know that I can name. This is terrible. I'm a movie guy. I don't even know who that is. Like,
does she not sing as well?
I'm sure she did. She does.
Okay.
Yeah, like Doris Day or something. But I've heard the name, but I cannot place what movie. Here, keep going.
You look her up. Put her on the screen real quick.
Right,
I do agree with some of these. We have anything Hallmark, Christian movies, Ghost with Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze.
Oh, classic! I've seen that.
No.
And Whoopi Goldberg. Don't forget Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah. National Velvet. I probably should have checked these movies and make sure they're all church appropriate.
Yeah.
The Monty Stratton Story. And so those are some of the ones that came in here. Is this Loretta?
This is Loretta. Here, just so that we all are on the same page here. Wait for it, and boom.
Oh.
Okay, hold on. Oh, well, I put the words over her face for a question, but that's Loretta Lynn right there. I'm sorry, that was like super last minute. But yeah, I guess she's been in some good movies, and
not bad.
Yeah, I have to watch it. What about you? What's your favorite movie?
Well, I think that we did not ask this as a question, but we've been friends for 12 years, going on 13. Mm-hmm. You should know my favorite movie.
I do know your favorite.
Because I think I know your favorite movie.
Yep. Yeah, your favorite movie is. Let me think about it. Is it? I was gonna say a girl movie, but I can't think of one right off the top of my head. The Notebook? Is it The Notebook?
Oh, that's top 5.
No, I'm just kidding. Without a doubt, your favorite movie is Remember the Titans, starring Denzel Washington.
Yep.
It's. Would you say it's the ultimate sports movie?
So that's like 1A. 1B is Hoosiers, but those two movies are like, But Remember the Titans, number 1 for sure.
Yeah, I think that is a very solid choice.
Yeah.
It's not the right choice though, because my favorite movie is the best movie of all time.
Inception.
Yeah, it's Inception. Yeah.
Is it all right?
Yeah. I always say
I think
this.
you said that a few weeks ago.
I may have let the cat out of the bag, but so for me, I think God gave us Jesus. He gave me, my wife Brittany, and my children, and then shortly afterwards, he gifted us with the director called Christopher Nolan, who is the best director of all time. He directed Inception, The Prestige, all the Batman movies, the recent ones. Anyways,
we could edit that out if we want.
Yeah, we'll cut that out. So anyways, all right, well there it is. What's your favorite movie? That was awesome. Yeah. All right, so 1 Peter, we're finally here, and you want me to read this first question here, or what? Okay, so our first question that Pastor Scott sent to you was, has a trial of faith ever been more precious to you than gold?
Yeah, so we were going off verse number 7 here, and of course I brought CSB, which is going to sound a little bit different here, but verse number 7, it says, so that proven character of your faith, and what it said in, I think, ESV or maybe New King James was a trial, but the proving of your faith,
right.
Character of your faith, more valuable than gold, which though perishable is refined by fire. And so it's really, we took this question out the verse. Has there been a spiritual time in your life, a spiritual trial, not doing something stupid and having to suffer the results of that, but has there been a spiritual trial in your life that you would say that was worth more than the price of gold? That was worth more than anything financially. And what we saw from one of our readers here, our listeners, and I know this guy, so I don't want to say his name, but he says, gold means very little to me. He goes, the faith it drew out of me, the faith I had drew out of my alcoholism.
Yeah.
So if you think about that, like, money would be great, but the fact that his faith brought him out of alcoholism and all the things associated with that and the years that were ruined, that's something you don't trade anything for that.
Right. The freedom from that is worth more than anything.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, let me ask you this: have you ever worked at a job? I'm sure you have. Have you worked at a job that you've been surrounded with people who did not know the Lord?
Yes.
Yes. Like many jobs, or just one?
There was one summer. I worked in the paint bins of the big 3 auto companies. We were subcontracted while they were on shutdown to go in there and like power wash. And this power washer would take off like your toes or your fingers, so you had to be careful. Yeah. But I was probably one of 2 Christians that were in there, and everything was just dirty words. And I remember like halfway through the summer towards the end, and we may cut this. But I was training for ministry, right? And so I was freshman or sophomore year of college, and I was around that so much. At the end of the summer, I was there and something happened and a curse word came out of me. And I never cursed. Mom and Dad, if you're listening, I didn't curse in high school. I never cursed. And all of a sudden it came out, and as soon as it came out, I'm like, where did that come from? And it was because for a whole summer that was around me. That was the language. It was
all in your mind.
And we would go places and work 15, 18-hour days. Right. And so that was everything that I was around.
Louise.
Yeah.
That's a long day. Well, so I've always, my first job I ever had was at a Christian bookstore. So that was pretty Christian. But I'll tell you what, of the rudest customers I've ever had are preachers. Legitimately. That is true.
Shut up.
Yeah. See what I'm saying? Yeah. But it's true. I had... Preachers would come in, and I would be waiting on them and stuff, and they were the rudest people. I'm like, good Lord.
They were under stress. It was like
time
crunch. There was sermon time coming. They had to get it.
Let's go with that. Yeah, we'll assume that was it. But that's the only Christian job I'd had before I worked here at the church. And but before that, I worked at a couple places, like a video rental store, which is where I grew in my knowledge of movies and stuff. Yep. But then I worked at the bank. And one thing when I'm reading through the book of 1 Peter that we have to remember is, James teaches us about facing temptations and trials and stuff. But 1 Peter is pretty specific as to the trials that they're talking about here are trials based specifically on you living out your faith. Mm-hmm. Peter's writing to a group of believers who are being persecuted, and he's like, look, these trials that you're going to face, and that's what he's talking about. And so when I was thinking about this question about a trial of faith that's been more precious to me than gold is, when I worked at the bank, I was not only the only Christian there, but they had heard that I was a youth pastor before, and because when I went to Pennsylvania,
is this the bank here?
Nope, this was a bank in Pennsylvania.
Okay,
yeah, and so I worked at the bank full time, and then I worked at the church part time as the worship leader and stuff. And it was funny because they came in and they said, "So hey, it says on your resume here that you worked at a church," and I said, "Yeah," and they were just like, "So you're like a youth pastor?" And I said, well, I mean, yeah, I was in kids ministry and stuff. And then it really gave me an image that I went into it. I mean, they came out swinging against me. They would say they would make comments and stuff about oh, I bet you believe that this shouldn't happen because you're a Christian and stuff. And I'm like, what? And so I got to know them really well. But the thing that I appreciate the most about that situation was it really caused me to research and know what I believed, because they would ask me stuff, and that's kind of the precious thing that came out of it is, it was terrible. Like there were some days I left so upset because they would be picking on me and stuff, and I'd be like, I was outnumbered all the time. But at the end, I was able to hold my own. And there was days that I would leave and I'd be like, I was able to tell them about Jesus, and it was fine. I had the answers to their questions.
Shove Jesus in their face.
In your
Take
face.
That.
Smacked them with a Bible. But no, I'm just kidding. But it helped me a lot. And so I look back on that situation and say, it was a hard time. Like my faith was tested, but I came out of it with a love for them. Like I didn't hate them for it. It kind of just made me want to reach them more and stuff. So for me, that's what it was. So.
Yeah, the trial. Yeah.
I
think same thing. We go back to early on in ministry, where you're choosing a career that is not going to be financially rewarding. And so I remember working part-time in Virginia at a church through college, and we got married young, had kids young, and so there was never any margin in the early years of ministry. And it was never today I have a question can I afford this or not? And it's a real question. Can I afford it? Like back then, there was never the question, can we afford it?
Yeah.
Like the answer was always no.
It was never, you never got the large size. It was always small.
We never went out. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, peanut butter. Yeah. So I think those early years of ministry, hey, we're all in, and having a supportive wife, we're all in, even though having this baby, even though we're living in this tiny little apartment, like the trials that came with that of not knowing, I mean, I could have called grandma and she would have sent me $50. So I don't want to get like it was horrible, but just those trials of, no, we're going to have one vehicle for a time being. No, we're not going places. No, we can't afford to go out to eat. No, we're not doing any of that. I look back at that trial where friends of mine were working the same amount, making way more money. I thought, what about their lifestyle? And nothing against them, but that's just what God didn't have for me at that time. And I look back at that time and what it did for our family, what it did for our faith, and what it did for ministry really became the foundation for everything else. That, if we have money, great, I'll get a nice hamburger. If we don't have money, that's fine, I'll eat at McDonald's. It kind of became a secondary thing where going into college, I thought business, where I was going to make money. I wanted to start businesses and do stuff like that. It ripped that away. And said, God, whether we have a lot, whether we have a little, we're going to serve you. And so that foundational learning period, which was probably 4 or 5 years, was huge in setting the standard of kind of taking away some of those things that we're not going to have the nicer things that are around us. And so,
that's cool. So it gave that situation gave you it gave you a good perspective.
Yeah, it was a growing time where I wouldn't trade that for anything, because I believe the trials that we experienced financially really shaped us for who we are. So I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Right. That's cool. Yeah. All right, cool. Question number 2. Go ahead.
What relationship do believers have with this world?
All right. So one of you guys wrote this in, simply that we are pilgrims in this world and that we should not put our roots down too deeply here. Again, our focus is to be on the hereafter.
Yep. And so I think we both enjoy vacations.
Oh, yeah.
We enjoy getting away, whether it's going camping or just getting away for a few nights in a hotel. I know you guys got your vacation in this year. Ours got canceled. But I remember going back to when we were first married, we couldn't afford vacations.
Right.
So we would find out where my father-in-law was going on a business trip.
Well done.
And then we would meet him there.
So wait a minute. You would say, hey, father-in-law, I heard you're going to be in Boston. We're going to be there too. And then he would say, just come stay with us or something?
Oh, no. He would say, have to go to Toronto for a business trip. And we say, great. We're coming.
So you just tag along.
When we get there, you're going to watch Zach one night, and we probably need you to pay for dinner too. And so we did that a couple times.
Well done. I'm impressed.
We did that before Myrtle Beach too.
Yeah.
They were on Myrtle. They were at Myrtle Beach enjoying their vacation, and we showed up.
They had no idea.
Oh, they had no idea.
Oh, that is.
Hey, we're here. We need you to pay for our food for the rest of the week.
That's bold. I'm very.
But she was the youngest, and she's the only daughter.
She's the only girl.
If Jeff or Mike would have come, maybe hey,
her brothers.
No,
but never the daughter. Yeah, I got you.
Good. So when I think about that, I think this is a vacation. This is not our home. I go back to verse number 4. It says that we have an inheritance that is imperishable, undefiled, unfading, kept in heaven for you and I. So our inheritance, our home is somewhere else. We're passing by. And I think as we develop through the book of 1 Peter, we're going to see more of what our mission is and what it means to live as a Christian throughout this time. But the standard is that, yes, this is just passing by. This is not the end game. This is not what it's all wrapped up to be. This is just for a season. This is just our job for a time. But our home is not here on earth. It's a vacation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you said exactly what I was going to say about not our home. Like, if we can keep that perspective and just remember that we're here temporarily, I think I mentioned this when I preached the other day, just briefly, is that the problem that a lot of people have is that we treat this as if it's our ultimate home, and we try to like put roots down in things that God never created to be like lasting fulfillment, For instance, like we talk about substance abuse, we talk about relationships, all these different things. People try to put all of their hope into these different things. And what they find is that it never fulfills. Yep. Like ultimately it never fulfills. Like,
and then you got to find something else. stronger, something else better.
Which really that's exactly the case, especially with like addicts and stuff. You start with a certain drug or whatever, and then you always have to find the next thing that's better than the previous one. And this is true even with every aspect of life, is that we always try to put our faith and our hope into these things that were never meant to be fulfilling for us. And so is it a wonder that so many, like this, that's the thing about Hollywood that always is, I just can't believe people don't see it much, is they try their best for the fame and the wealth, but so many of them, they have terrible lives. Like so many of them look back. It's funny, like comedians that you love. I remember Robin Williams, who's awesome. They said Robin Williams was like depressed outside and stuff. Yeah. And you'd be like, but he's got all the money. He's got all the fame. He's got all this stuff. And so this question for me, it's like when we talk about what relationship should we have with this world, we're here for a purpose, right? But we're never supposed to completely lay our roots down here. You know, we, like you said, we got to remember that we're just kind of passing through, take advantage of all the opportunities we can while we're here, but the world is not our home.
Yeah, and I think I would add on to that, as Christians, sometimes we don't fully experience the Christian life like we're supposed to. We're going to look through what it looks like to be a Christian in an unbelieving world. But sometimes you have people that are like, I want to keep one foot in the world where I'm enjoying my parties, I'm enjoying my stuff over here, I'm enjoying stuff that Scripture clearly speaks against, but I want to put one foot over here into the church world. Right. And so I'll give you Sundays and Wednesdays, right? I'll give you those 2 days, which is pretty good commitment. Yeah. And so you feel this, like, I want to say this Jesus part of your life, but then it conflicts against what's going on with the rest of your life. And so you never fully experience the life that God wants you to, because the two are fighting against each other.
You're serving two masters.
Two masters. And I think when you come out of that, you put all that stuff to the side and you really live wholeheartedly for Christ, as we're going to see here in 1 Peter. You go all in, then you fully understand what the Christian life is like, and that's the more abundant life. And so maybe if you're watching and you don't feel that more abundant life, I'd ask, do you have your whole heart into the Christian life, or do you have the weekend into the Christian life, or just Sundays into the Christian life instead of the whole process? And that's what I really understand, is if we just, hey, this is where we're at, this is where we are, but this is not really our home. And don't try to keep one foot planted in this home. Have our mindset on eternity the whole time. Still enjoy vacations if they ever come back. Enjoy spicy chicken sandwiches from Popeyes. Still enjoy these great things this world has to offer. But this is not our home.
I like it. Yep. Cool. All right, well, let's do our last question here. This is question number 3. Why is it so important to love one another? And then right under here you have the passage, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all your heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. It's the first and great commandment. The second is like it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. That's you did the King James version.
That's what the answer from one of the people that wrote in.
Oh, I didn't. Well, there's another one. I didn't know there was 2 there. Yeah, it's in dark.
Okay. It's the same.
Gotcha.
Same
all right.
Person there. I think what they're saying, it's so important because they call it the second greatest commandment in all of Scripture. Like, love God, that's the first. Love your neighbor as yourself is the second. And the rest of the response here says, if Jesus said that it's important for us to love our neighbors, which he did, he broadly defines our neighbor as one another, then we should follow us to love one another. And it is akin to keeping the greatest of commandments. I think I need glasses.
Are you getting older?
Or I can't read, one of the two.
Let me tell you something. I love that answer, and I'm somewhat annoyed because that was my answer.
Was it?
Yeah, seriously. I wrote, write the greatest commandment. And so whoever wrote that, kudos to you. You're awesome. It's funny. I'm doing a study right now, and in the study, it's talking about how to overcome certain temptations and certain stuff. And I'd never thought of this before, but if you want to overcome a temptation or anything that's coming against you, you always have to remind yourself what the greatest commandment is, because a lot of times your responses are based out of pride. And if you can remember this right here, I always tell people, if you want to love people more, love God first, and then you will love people more.
The outflow,
Exactly right. In fact, I just did a wedding, my first COVID wedding the other day. Actually, yeah, it was pretty cool. Shout out to the Pellingtons. Congratulations, yeah. But one of the things I did in their wedding was Have you ever seen people do the, the scripture, like a strand of three is not easily broken, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just 3 strands and then they wrap them together.
Hey, I've been at a wedding where they did not practice braiding that.
Oh, really?
And they couldn't get it.
That's so
It was
funny.
awesome.
These 2 practiced. They were
good.
pros, man. But one strand is the groom, one is the bride, and then the other strand is God. And it's this idea that they weave together. And one of the things I told them in the wedding and in their marriage counseling was, if don't buy into the lie that you have to put your wife first at all times. You put God first, and then you will love your wife more. If you go to the source of love, you're able to love correctly everything else. Yeah. So if you want to be a better husband, love God more, and you'll love your wife more. If you want to be a better dad, love God more, and you'll love your kids more. And so I love that this person wrote that there and completely stole my answer. So thank you so much.
See, great answers from you guys. Thank you so much.
Which really lends to the idea that we just need to let them teach this
what are we
whole
doing
thing.
here in the first place?
So
no, I'll close this out with the last part of this where I see love one another, and I went specifically with believers. Believers, we're called to love one another. As we see Peter begins to write, we see Paul begins to write, James begins to write this New Testament principles, and it constantly has to do with one another. And if we don't love one another, it's not going to break down to these other one another's. And if we see, I think in New Testament, there's somewhere around 60 different one another's. And so if we talk about all these different one another's, we're supposed to be in community. We're supposed to be together as believers. You're supposed to do groups like this. You're supposed to do maybe even groups that are smaller than this, so you really do connect more in person with people. And I'd encourage you when we open those up, to find a smaller group, to be in community with one another where you can. And some of the ones that I'm reminded of, especially when I'm around you, is Ephesians 4:2. It says, tolerate one another.
That's great.
This is first take. We're not. This is
for the record. I remembered to turn the camera on this time, so
great.
This is the first take. Yeah,
first take. But then I go into Galatians 5, and it says, serve one another, be devoted to one another in Romans, be kind and forgive again in Ephesians, and closes out in Galatians 6, which we just finished. Bear one another's burdens, and so it talks about all these different one another's we're supposed to have. And we're supposed to be in this community. We're supposed to serve one another, be with one another, stir one another up to good works, just bear one another's burdens. All these different one another's that we can't have if we don't first love one another. And so the encouragement I have for you is find a group of people. I know for me, the group of people that is in my small group, we are different people from different backgrounds, from different ages, different times of life. And we're able to help those that are coming behind us, and we're able to get resources and encouragement for those that have been there, done that, and survived. Like you talked about teenage girls on Sunday, like how many has a teenage girl? Oh, yeah. And let me pray for you or something like that. And some of the encouragement is people that have been there that done that. Yeah. And you're able to see that they survived and they're still alive. And then these young ones that are starting to have kids and the encouragement you can be for them, or the horror stories that you can tell. And I don't get it, because Maura is pretty perfect. Like, she's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, she's awesome. Yeah, but
I don't know what happens inside the house, but outside the house, she's awesome.
She's awesome. You talk my oldest kid, my daughter Maura. She is sassy.
Started her own baking business.
Yeah. She bakes bread and stuff.
I had some. It was phenomenal.
It's delicious bread. Stay tuned. But yeah, I mean, yeah, she's great. She's a great kid, but it can be tough.
We may cut this out. Do you remember it was like preschool or kindergarten? We have kids that are in the same class. My youngest and his oldest are in the same class. Do you remember this story?
I wanted to murder your son. Yeah, I remember it. Yeah. Do you want me to tell the story?
Yeah.
So here's what happens. My daughter, Maura, is standing with his son, Toby. So, like he said, Maura's my oldest and Toby's your youngest.
Yeah. And kindergarten, you think? Somewhere
it was kindergarten. Yeah, it was close. It might have been younger than that, because it was still, we were in the cafeteria, and it was dinner before Wednesday night, and Maura and Toby were making a lot of noise. And I looked over at Maura, and I said, Maura, quiet, you're making too much noise. And Toby stepped in front of her, put his hand, like as if to protect her from me. And he stands there and he just goes, she ain't being too loud. And I just wanted to be like, who are you, child? I'm going to punt you. Like, I'm going to kick you. It was not a good moment for me spiritually.
She ain't being too loud.
She ain't being too loud. I was like, who is this child? And then I remembered he was a Leewald, so it made sense.
Yeah, but we've raised 3 good kids.
And he has 4, so yeah. Well, there it is. Let me just say one last thing to kind of piggyback on what you said. I wonder, Peter's talking about love one another, love one another.
Yeah.
When do you think a fellow Christian needs to be loved the most? It's during a difficult time, right?
Yeah.
You talked about this with your situation with Amy, is how the church just kind of came around you guys.
A whole Sunday of prayer, yeah,
right.
It was phenomenal.
Right, and remember what these guys are going through. Not just non-Christians were after them, but the Jewish people didn't even like them because they thought that they were completely abandoning the Jewish faith. They're like, this Christian thing is too much. So they were really disliked on every front. They were persecuted, all these terrible things. And Peter's like, listen, more than ever, you need to be there for one another and show love.
And going back to what you were going to say is, it's not like they were just getting nasty comments on Facebook,
right?
But they were losing their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I forgot to bring this up again this week, which I won't do because it's too long, but they died in some pretty graphic and horrific ways, which again, we'll talk about later. But yeah, I mean, more than ever, they needed the love of other Christians, of the church, to come around them. So yeah, it's a good example for us today. So be there for one another, bear each other's burdens, all that good stuff. So am I sweating? Yeah, it's so hot in here.
We've got to set the air for next week.
Well, let's pray and go into the air-conditioned building. So
all right,
let's do it. All right.
God, we love you, and we thank you that we can have a relationship with you through your Son, Jesus Christ. God, we thank you for the freedoms we have in this nation. God, we thank you that we consider churches as essential, and that they're able to open up, God, and that we were able to meet this whole time. And we just thank you that Father, we're able to live in a nation like this where we're not persecuted like we see Peter and the people he's writing to as they were. God, I pray that we'll see how to live as Christians, as believers in an unbelieving world. And God, we just ask for a blessing on this study, that as we come out of it, God, we'll be bolder with our faith. We'll understand that our missions that we have here on earth, and God, how this is not our home, but our home is in eternity in heaven with you. God, we love you and we thank you for all you do.